One of the most fascinating fields in philosophy is the philosophy of ethics or morality. Um, Probably next to the philosophy of art, there's nothing more elusive than that because there's really little evidence and even less logic involved often. Um, and so it's tough. There's two really tough parts of ethics. One is the motivation, what is the reason to be ethical? What is the motivation? Um, what is the overlying prescription? Is it a matter of health? Is it a matter of universal being? So on and so forth. Why do you have to be moral? And then once you get past that, once you find a reason to dedicate yourself to moral consciousness and moral maturity, and delving into that world of really unwrapping what moral consciousness is all about, then you have to find a system that works. Is it going to be the Old Testament Ten Commandments? Is it going to be more of a Jesus Christ, Buddha type of morality, or is it based on something entirely different, more pragmatic, like what we see in what we call utilitarianism, which is something that is most often attributed to the poet Shelley in the Romantic era. And it essentially says it's kind of a democratic look at ethics that says, whatever is beneficial to the most amount of people should be determined ethical as a goal for the entire human race. And obviously, there's a lot of examples that you could put there where democracy doesn't ever represent or doesn't always represent the truth, and certainly in ethics, just because it benefits the masses doesn't make it morally um, um, necessary or even moral, if that makes any sense. Sorry about that, but I think you know what I'm saying. So those are sort of the two major problem areas. Now, the first one, the motivation, if you have any sort of spiritual inclination, if you are theistic at all or believe that we have a spiritual side to us, then in almost all of those situations, there is some sort of ethics already prescribed in that scenario. And so, whether you're monotheistic and you have, an Old Testament type God situation where you have an ethical Ten Commandments that have been handed down to you and you are, you have to obey them, you're afraid almost to not obey them. Again, that ethic is in there, so you have that motivation, you are there to please God. Otherwise, if you are more of a Buddha, Jesus type of ascension, type of understanding of God, then you're looking at a situation where you have still a moral prescription involved, because you know that your enlightenment involves being able to connect with humanity. To give is to receive, and that in itself is the morality right there, if you can think about it. Or we could unpack that, but certainly any kind of spirituality like this that's looking for ascension typically has a morality within it. Whether even things like veganism and stuff like that. And if you're more, let's just combine New Age and Eastern for lack of time. Not that I would normally conflate anything like that. But if you have more of just sort of this universal understanding of a larger notion of the energy of a God, or of a universal power, then normally you're trying to harmonize with the peace of that, or to find peace and harmony within those sort of frequencies. Again, that involves a moral prescription. So when you have spirituality, you are inspired to be moral and to dig deep within your self-awareness to find, the quintessential morality for your life. But if you're atheistic, if you're an atheist, what is your motivation to be? What is your motivation to be ethical at all? There's nothing that necessitates you to be moral. It's just kind of a choice at this point. It's not a matter of life or death per se. And so what I would prescribe to an atheist is to think about life in terms of art, in the sense that, just because you're an atheist does not mean you're free of being self-aware and to dive deep into self-awareness. And when you dive deep into self-awareness, you have to look at empirical observations. And certainly one of the empirical observations you see when you dig into deep into self-observation is that as human beings, we share this inclination to perfection. And we have this perception of what is beautiful and what is not beautiful, what is orderly and what is not orderly. And knowing that that is an intuition within all humanity, that we have this unique perception to be able to delineate those kind of two things, then you have to look at your life under that spectrum as well. And you have to think of as an artist and create a beautiful life. And you may say, well, art beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and so a chaotic, disorderly, immoral life could be just as beautiful as a sanctimonious, beautiful moral life. But I say to you that you are just leading a life of resistance if you really think that an immoral life is beautiful to you. You may be intrigued. Let's just get right down to the most extreme situations. You may be intrigued by murder, by manipulation for money or something of that nature. But I think even before you even step into those shoes, you know the emptiness that awaits you. Because once you reach your goal, what awaits you after that? Once the person's dead, you don't become a Superman. You don't become cuter. You don't become more handsome or rich or anything like that. And if you were trying to become more rich, once you manipulated the masses through some sort of lie to become more rich, what happens after that? That's where the emptiness begins. There's no depth to disorder. Okay? Once you have a bit of disorder, it gets very boring. I don't care who you are. Here's another way to look at it. If you're gonna say, I'll give you two more ways to look at it. I mean, if you're gonna tell me that disorder and chaos is beautiful, then you're telling me that you still have a sense of beauty and you think that that is beautiful. So you're still trying to appeal to beauty. It would be more to the point or defensive of your point if you said chaos is chaos. And I appreciate that. I could understand your appreciation without denying the empirical evidence that you still know what is beautiful and that chaos is not beautiful in that sense. Or let's say purposeless chaos. Because a Jackson Pollock painting has a lot of chaos to it. But there's purpose to the painting that brings beauty and understanding to a humanity. So moving forward, another way to look at this is the depth and the challenge to it. We think of things that are beautiful in their rarity and in the effort that it takes to create them, that the rarity is created by the effort that it takes to create them, whether it's diamonds, rainbows, talent, things that are not every day, that take either work or almost divine grace, are the things that we find beautiful. There is no challenge in murdering someone. Or very little, at least. There is an incredible, endless challenge in giving birth to a child and trying to create a human. There's an incredible, endless challenge in trying to rebirth a stranger into a new life, into giving him new life, into sponsoring life into somebody so that they live more than they've ever lived before. That's a challenge, to inspire people, to grow human beings. That's a challenge, not to murder people. Murder people is not a challenge. Once it's done, it's done. Okay? To lie to people is not a challenge. It's a small challenge. But to tell the truth and to seek courage and to find the lessons that are behind telling the truth to people, that's a challenge. That's what makes it beautiful. Okay? So that's your prescription if you're an atheist. Your prescription is to live a beautiful life. And you have no excuse just because you don't believe in God to not seek consciousness of morality. That's like denying to seek the consciousness of how plants grow, or of how the sun works, or of anything. It is empirically here to deny that is lying to yourself. So once we get past the motivation, we have some motivation to be ethical. Then the next big challenge happens. What's an ethical system that I can live by? Is it the Ten Commandments? Is it Kantianism? Is it utilitarianism? Is it Confucius, which basically is Kantianism, which is basically the Golden Rule, Old Commandments again? All of them will be challenged, as you see. You can go through your History 101 book and find that each one gets challenged by the most extreme notions. Whether it's Hitler drowning and you can save 6 million people, do you save Hitler? Or if you're starving and it's no fault of your own and you have a chance to steal a meal, even for you and your child, is that an immoral situation? These are the kind of extreme questions that really challenge the ethical principles involved with most of these schools of thought, because they are trying to take rules and abstract them rather than abstract conditions, if that makes any sense to you. Now, there was what I consider one of the best ethicians, if not the best ethician, that changed my life early on at the age of 18. Not only changing me to vegetarianism or to thinking about the intake of meat, leather, and animal products, but also in how I treat humanity and how I treat my family and things of that nature. His name is Peter Singer. He's very modern. His writings came out late 80s, early 90s. And really, though he's very prolific, his entire ethical system, I think, comes down to one sentence or one concept, and that's the beauty of it, because to me, simplicity is a reflection of truth, and I don't think that's something I made up, but I can't find a good quote for it right now, so those are my words. In that, truth always comes in a very simple form. It just appeals in very few words, very few formulas, very few math. And so I can sum up Peter Singer's entire system in one sentence. If something can experience pain, then you should not cause it unwarranted pain. That's including yourself. And that's any dimension of pain. Physical pain, obviously. If you can experience physical pain, then you shouldn't cause it unwarranted physical pain. Animal, yourself, that's about all I can think of right now. But there's other dimensions of pain, too, that you have to worry about, especially with human beings. If that being can experience emotional pain, for example, then you shouldn't cause it unwarranted emotional pain and distress. Sometimes there is warranted pain for the benefit of that being. For instance, if you have to extract a tooth, there's going to be momentary pain. If you have to pull off a bandage, there'll be momentary pain. That is warranted pain. Now, warranted and unwarranted pain is entirely its own debate in itself, and it's not hard to decipher, really, because it really comes up to the subject matter. And sometimes the subject can't speak for itself, and that's where the warranted unwarranted question comes in. But very rarely, for instance, the vaccine debate would really push that debate in a situation on whether that's a warranted or unwarranted scenario. But there's still a conclusion that could be made. Just because it's a debated topic, if the evidence was laid out before us, we could easily find out whether or not this was a warranted situation for babies or not. Obviously, in my opinion, it is completely unwarranted. But moving on. This is a perfect prescription, a perfect stepping stone for ethics. As you grow in moral consciousness, it is an ocean full of growth and soul for you to dive into. And it will lead you into the most epic and extraordinary relationships and life. This is just my opinion. And hopefully, this logic that I've laid out before you, and this first stepping stone of understanding how you should treat the beings around you through Peter Singer's advice of not causing unwarranted pain around you, will lead you now to a life of peace and deeper understanding of beauty in your life. Good luck.